Hello and welcome to Lesson 12 in French. We're today going to be talking about comparatives and superlatives in French. And the goal by the end of this video is to be able to use them when writing or speaking. So let's start with part 1, which is le comparatif. So basically, the comparative in French compares two or more things. It expresses relative superiority or inferiority, so that means more than or less than. And it could also mean that two things are equal. The formula would be to use plus, moins, or aussi. So plus would be like the superiority, which is like more than, and then moins would be less than, aussi would be equal to. And then the next part would be to use an adjective or an adverb based on your sentence, and then finally top it off with que and then the rest of your sentence. So let's take a look at some examples here. For example, for supériorité, obviously it's plus something que, so more than, or sometimes like something than. So here if we have the sentence where Emily est plus sportive que Tom, so Emily is more athletic than Tom. Okay, so we have Emily, the verb être, and then you have plus, and then the adjective in this case, and then with que. Infériorité, so it would be Elk Grove est moins cher que New York. So Elk Grove is less expensive than New York. And égalité would be aussi que, so tu es aussi intelligent que Max. So you are as smart as Max. So like the English translation for aussi que would be as. So here I have some practice questions for you. They're pretty straightforward. Come up with a noun and an adjective or an adverb, whatever it asks for. And because of that, I'm not going to be putting the answers because there really are no one, like there's no one answer. It's pretty open-ended. Part 2 is le superlatif. So it expresses extremes such as ultimate, superiority, or inferiority. It claims one thing is the most or the least of all. And there are two types of superlatives. So it would be supériorité and infériorité. So for example, for the first one, again, it would be le plus. So it's similar to what we talked about with comparatives, where we're talking about plus que or moins que. But with superlative, because it's an extreme, you would say the most or the least. For example, here it's c'est le livre le plus intéressant du monde. So it's the most interesting book in the world. With something like the least, you would say nous avons acheté la maison la moins chère. So we bought the least expensive house. And then here I have some practice questions. And for example, say le ou la based on your adjective. If it's like feminine or masculine, you're going to be choosing one of these, and then you're going to choose a noun. And highlighted here are just some like things to keep in mind of. So for example, here I gave it a feminine pronouns, and then here I gave it masculine and feminine. So just keep in mind. So part 3 is bon et bien. We usually express a superior comparative with something and the superior superlative with like something ist, and also with le plus. But there are also other special comparative and superlative forms. So let's take a look at for comparative. So bon in French is good, but it's irregular because you can't say plus bon. Okay, that's incorrect. Like you can't say in English even more good. You have to say better. And better in French is meilleur. Of course, it has to have agreements with whatever you're using in your sentence. So if it's masculine singular, you would say like just R. Feminine singular would be RE. Masculine plural is RS, and so just adding an S. And feminine plural would be adding an ES. So for example, ce gâteau, it's masculine. Et meilleur, because it's masculine, you don't make any agreement. Que les autres gâteaux. So for the superlatif, again for bon, it's irregular. You can't say le plus bon, right? It has to be, because remember, superlative is the ultimate, like good or bad. So you can't say, for example, le plus bon. You have to say le meilleur. And again, there's the agreements here. So an example could be son dessin est le meilleur. So his drawing is the best. And some irregular forms that need to be memorized. Here for bon, it's an adjective, so you're going to be using meilleur, and it describes a noun. Bien would become mieux, and that describes an action. So whether you're describing a noun or whether you're describing an action in a sentence, that's how you know whether to use meilleur or mieux. And that's something that many people get confused a lot of the time, but we have to remember that meilleur is for a noun and mieux is for an action or like a verb. So here, some practice questions is you're going to come up with a noun, and it's better in math than another noun. Les, whatever noun you're going to choose, sont meilleurs que something else, and Helen, here you're going to be choosing a verb, and because it's a verb, you're going to use mieux because it's going to be describing that verb, and then que something. So here are some practice questions for the general lesson. So you're going to choose the correct or most appropriate adverb or adjective in each of the sentences below. So for example, je joue, you're going to choose circle either meilleur or mieux, au basket que toi. Okay, so just like that, you're going to be choosing the correct one. And some of them I have highlighted, so for example, la and le, because that's a hint. So whenever you have le, la, les, or un and une, it's before a noun. So that gives you a hint. If we're talking about something before a noun, then which one would that be? Okay, so that is the lesson for today. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. I know it takes some practice to understand fully comparatives and superlatives, but this was the lesson I provided. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.